Hi guys and welcome back to SwitchUp. Thanks so much to every single one of you who watches, leaves a comment down below, or just generally stays engaged. We see ourselves almost like, if you remember Games Master magazine back in the 90s, we're kind of like the channel version of that. A massive thank you to our, wait for it, 4 patrons on Patreon. If you want to join those guys and get exclusive content and a few games each month with Glenn and I, then make sure you sign up. A massive thank you to Shannon and Jace Glover. There's absolutely no way we could review all these games ourselves, and they've written this lovely Narir Tower of Shirin review. Having just reviewed My Brother Rabbit and thoroughly enjoying the game, I was approached to do another point and click review for the game Narir Tower of Shirin, and so I jumped at the opportunity. I guess you could call me SwitchUp's point and click girl now. I must admit though, I was never into the point and click games, but I do love a good puzzler. This game, coupled with the story, definitely intrigued me enough to give it a go. Does Narir Tower of Shirin make a name for itself in this saturated indie Switch market, or does it get lost in the shuffle? Let's find out. Our story begins with a young girl named Nairi, who is living in the rich district of a Middle Eastern town called Shirin. It doesn't take long for trouble to set in when Nairi's parents are taken by the royal guard and she is forced to seek help from a neighbour. She's then smuggled through the desert only to fall into the hands of a group of treasure bandits. The bandits, who are actually cats, end up befriending Nairi and the group become fast friends. Nairi misses her parents dearly and decides to return to her town of Shirin to find them. With the help of a former gangster rat named Rex, Nairi will explore Shirin and the secrets of its tower in order to not only uncover mysteries about the town itself, but about the past and the way she is tied to it. The beginning of the story didn't capture me right away, and I found myself losing interest. I felt tossed along through the story just as Nairi was carted through the desert in her crate. However, I stuck with it for a bit longer and ended up becoming much more interested in the story and the characters themselves as they evolved. I can't help but feel like the cat bandits in the beginning were out of place for the rest of the story though. It really hindered me from fully immersing myself in the game because I couldn't help but feel like, where's this leading? After talking through it with Jace, he explained that this section may have been meant to act as a sort of tutorial to learn the mechanics of the game, and that made a lot of sense, and isn't something I would have thought of. At one point in the story, Nairi begins to have flashbacks of past events in the town and in her own life. She's even able to speak to some of the individuals in the past. This aspect of the game felt eerily familiar to the movie The Mummy Returns, and on no account was it an original concept. With all that being said, there are many endearing qualities about the story and the rather adorable characters within it. It was by no means predictable and did surprise me, and while it does seem that children could be the target audience here, adults will still be intrigued enough by some of the jokes and dark humour. Story receives 16 out of 20. I was excited to hear that all of the Switch's various gaming styles are utilised here. Being a point-and-click graphic novel game, it would be a missed opportunity on the Switch to not employ the touchscreen capabilities. Touchscreen mode is fairly straightforward as you press on items with your finger in order to select them, or you press on the edges of the screen to move from one area to another. Initially, I was excited for the touchscreen capabilities and eager to play in this mode, but my excitement quickly turned to frustration when I found myself accidentally moving between screens when I simply meant to click on an item in the corner. In the other modes, you have a hand cursor on the screen that turns into a magnifying glass if something can be inspected, or to an arrow to indicate you'll be moving to another screen. While playing on the touchscreen, you have no cursor indicator, and selecting things becomes somewhat of a gamble. Somebody with a rather large finger would not find this mode very forgiving. A simple fix for this problem could have been to add a specific button or visual clue for switching between screens, as has been used in many other point-and-click titles. In handheld mode, you don't have to utilise touchscreen and can instead use the left stick to move your cursor around while pressing the A button to select. Pressing the L button can slow your cursor's speed down if you find that it's moving too quickly. In docked mode, you can play with either a single Joy-Con or a controller. The single Joy-Con setup was fairly easy to use and movement was fluid. I found this method of playing the game to be the easiest and most similar to playing with a mouse on the PC. Finding objects is easy enough. The game is marketed as a graphic adventure with a strong narrative, and it is exactly that. Point and click puzzles are definitely present, but not the bread and butter of this game. As you progress in the game, you're moving from screen to screen to get through the town of Shirin. Each screen is accompanied by loading, and in some instances, you're moving through 45 different screens to get to your destination. The load screens start to become tiresome and cause you to feel like you're doing a lot of waiting. This isn't much of an issue unless you're searching for an item to progress the story, then frustration can really set in. Another element that detracts from gameplay is that you don't always know where you are in the town. There's no map feature, so you can become lost. A map or a quick port feature would have been welcome to avoid getting lost or moving through 15 to 20 separate locations. The puzzles themselves were very easy and didn't require much thought. A few of the puzzles I encountered were visually broken. They still worked, but I suspected the game may be patched after release to fix some of these visual bugs. The good news is that they were not so broken that I couldn't advance in the story. The gameplay and controls receive a combined 13 out of 20. The graphic novel aspect of the game is most definitely the strongest feature of it, and sure to please fans of the genre. The game is visually appealing and the story itself fits well within the art style. While Nairi is what appears to be a human, other characters in the game are different species like ducks or cats. This anthropomorphic style reminded me a lot of Studio Ghibli movies Jace introduced me to not long ago. I understand though that not everyone will enjoy the chibi look used for the characters, but I'd still score them a respectable 14 out of 20. The soundtrack in this game is pleasant to listen to. It's not so overbearing that you can't focus, and the chosen music fits the theme of the game. There's no voice acting, and I don't necessarily think it needed it, but would have certainly been a lovely addition. However, the keyboard typing sound when engaged in dialogue becomes grating, and would have perhaps been better with character-specific noises, such as you see in Celeste. The game also utilises HD Rumble, and while it's not the most robust usage of the feature, I appreciated that it was included. For me, audio scores a slightly disappointing 12 out of 20. Narir Tower of Shirin is priced at $9.99 in the US or £8.99 in the UK. The game's going to take you around 5 to 7 hours to complete. Without spoiling anything, this is the first of a series of games, which is great, but mileage will vary depending on how good your memory is and how much you pay attention to the conversations. However, load screens and backtracking do add quite a bit of padding to that experience. Compared to other games in the genre, such as the Journey Down series, this is at the lower end price-wise, and I think it will attract a lot more buyers because of that. With its solid story alone, I can definitely recommend it at this price point for fans of the genre. Value scores 15 out of 20. In conclusion, Narir Tower of Shirin is a graphic novel adventure game with some puzzles thrown in. Nairi goes on a quest to save her parents and ends up discovering a lot more about herself and the city along the way. If you're a fan of a story-driven game, I recommend you give this one a shot. The load screens and backtracking may be frustrating sometimes, but at the asking price it's not going to break the bank and there's enough here to keep you engaged. Now, you may be thinking that there were quite a few negatives in the gameplay section, but think back to every good classic adventure game you played. There was backtracking. In those point and click games, there were times of frustration where you just couldn't find where you were going and you spent ages going from screen to screen. But there was also one element that tied those games together and keep them so beloved in your memory, and that's the story. And that's exactly what Nairi does so well. It brings together a story that's quite unusual, a little bit quirky, but very memorable. Narir Tower of Shirin gets a SwitchUp score of 70%. Sure, it has its quirks, and having to backtrack can be a real pain in the bum, but this is still a really fun game. Thanks so much to Jace and Shannon for this excellent review, and as always, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!